think the honorable thing for our species to do is deny our programming. Stop reproducing. Walk hand in hand into extinction. One last midnight, brothers and sisters opting out of a raw deal.
Do not trust any friends or family members. I repeat, do not trust friends.
Chris, I think I've asked you this before, but what's your favorite nerd thing? Like, not like pop culture product, but like, because I asked you who your favorite superhero was, and I think you said Spider-Man and X-Men or something like that. But I mean, like, cast your net wider. Like, what's your favorite nerd thing?
Oh, Jesus, that's a really tough question, man.
Yeah, let's some of them. You mean not your what?
I don't know. I think like when I think back to my youth, like X-Men really looms large. Just the feel of it. I'd say probably like role playing games too, like White Wolf games, Dungeons and Dragons. We played our fair share of that stuff.
Yeah.
That was really like I would buy like any book that came out and just kind of delve into it.
Yeah. Yeah, I still have a bunch of those books. It's a real treat to go through them and see how, like, those White Wolf books.
Yeah.
I was going through, I don't know, maybe it was a month or so ago, but I was like Werewolf the Wild West and World of Darkness Compendium. Some of the like the houses, like the Wizards, Verbena. Who were the Akashic Brotherhood, those martial arts guys?
Right on.
Yeah.
Because you know what?
Anyway,
they've even you get a little bit of history, you get some philosophy in there, like your mind would get blown. It was cool stuff.
Yeah, and they'd always have like for further reading, you might want to check out these things to get the vibe of all this stuff, and it was a little training session for ultra nerd behavior, which didn't do me any harm whatsoever. I don't think anyone who plays role playing games. Like, the fact that there was a satanic panic about Dungeons and Dragons is so fucking hilarious. Like, clearly, it's clearly like the fear of the literally unknown. That must have led them to do that. Like,
did you ever see that movie, the Tom Hanks one? I think Tom Hanks was in that, where it's like it's like this gaming group, and like they're like, oh, you have to stab this person like 20 times to get all the experience. Like they blow it out into real life and like murder some dude. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
LARPing, when LARPing goes wrong.
Yeah, just gamifying murder.
Yeah. When the fuck was that? Like, when did that movie come out?
I'm gonna say the 80s.
Okay.
Because it was like a young. I hope I'm not like making this up, but I'm pretty sure that was like one of Tom Hanks' first movies.
Oh, first Joe, the Mazes and Monsters?
Yeah.
Hanks. Yeah, fascinating. Okay, so what did he do, like Joe versus the volcano after this? What the fuck? Anyway, I did not know about in his first lead acting role. Yeah, there we go. What the fuck? So what, they go on a murder spree?
Yeah, if I remember it correctly, like it all ends in like they confuse fantasy and reality, and then like
here we go.
Murder their friend.
Yeah, the film opens with a scene that is revisited later, in which a reporter meets with police searching a cavern. He is told a game of mazes and monsters got out of hand. Man, I want to watch this. This is probably the shittiest fucking movie.
Yeah, it's a 4.2 on IMDb. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
Not even the fans are going to support it.
Yeah, that means it's either like bad good or bad.
Yeah.
Hard to say.
Yeah, man. And then like role playing novel. Yeah, that's got to be it. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Cyberpunk, like all that stuff, kind of like spiraled out from role playing games for me. So that's a solid answer for me. How about you?
Oh, I'm really tempted to say role playing games now, but obviously, honestly, I took that as sort of foundational. I mean, I guess if I was going down, you can't just pick one. Obviously, I'm going to go with my one true love, Rifts. But I was thinking about how much I enjoy Metal Gear. I never tired of that. It was always, I love to just watch the little clips and go back and just kind of fuck around in the game. Even though, like, for the most part, it was really stupid. It really sung to me, and like never continues to sing.
No, that's a good call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It had a really
that world.
Did you ever finish? Did you ever play like Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain? Or
I did. It got
yeah,
way too up its own ass with the cutscenes. So like you'd play
yeah,
for like 20 minutes and then have to watch like an hour of movies.
yeah. That was the
Yeah.
most extreme version of that. I mean, it had been getting more and more like that throughout the series, but and it like the way it ended because dude, what's Kojima? He left.
That's right.
Like that was an unfinished game, and I was like, "Fuck you!" I was like, I was actually really enjoying it, and all of a sudden, it just kind of like came to a stupid end,
Yeah.
and then you see some of the storyboards of what it could have been, and you're like, "Fuck!" There's like at least 2-3 hours of gameplay left on this thing.
Yeah.
Oh well.
He's a genius and kind of marches to his own drum, I guess.
Yeah, I don't. You know what? He is, and he ought to. Like another top creator, another
Oh,
top another top 10
beautiful.
creator who marches to the beat of his own drum, a little fellow by the name of Alan Moore. Um, so friend of the good, very good friend of the podcast, D, who I correspond with regularly. He was writing one day about Alan Moore's fixation upon police, and which is like it's not just Alan Moore's fixation, but Alan Moore shares sort of a cultural fixation with police, and it's probably just because of the genres that he works in, right? Um, but I just got me thinking about like what role did because it's not something you think of Alan Moore as the anarchist, right?
Yeah.
And against the state, so on and so forth. And I thought that top 10 would be like, I just thought it would be a good little way to hopefully dig into that and see like, can we glean what Alan Moore thinks of police from top 10, and then like see if that like gets us anywhere in understanding like his other work. So that's what also this book fucking slaps. This is hilarious. I love this book. I didn't think I loved it, but upon rereading, I was really charmed with it. I think it comes to kind of like a flat ending. I would have liked to have seen a whole bunch more,
Yeah.
but you read a little bit of this, but you never dived in. Am I correct?
No, I've read the whole first, like I've read this once,
Okay, right.
and I have not gone on to the subsequent series.
That's fun. They're not like the 49ers is pretty good. It's another him thing with him and Gene Ha. I'd say Smacks is really funny, but it's kind of vapid. Actually, it's very funny, but it's also vapid.
I'd like to see
I
Alan Moore do to do something trivial. I don't think I've ever seen that.
Oh well, prior to actually this is in prior to the heady days of America's Best Comics. You got your Violator Bad Rock, you got your
That's true.
Spawn, like Wildcat Spawn, which I haven't read, but I can't imagine it's going to be very edifying. Some of his Wildcats run prior to this was pretty okay, but again, he wasn't getting at anything. He was just doing like his superhero job. So it is pretty trivial stuff. But then he started doing Supreme, his reboot, like his Superman thing, and I think after that he started becoming Alan Moore again, because I guess he had to sort of finish with From Hell as well to like
Hmm. That's
maybe like
right.
change
That's the
roles or
backstory. Yes. That's like From Hell is displacing. He just needed some light shit to do to make some money, probably.
yeah, well, and he had a huge tax bill, and he was becoming irrelevant because he didn't work for DC or Marvel anymore. It's weird to think that there was a period when people like he was the Watchmen guy, but like he wasn't putting out any work. He was putting out work through like independent publishers. That's where From Hell was being Taboo magazine or something like that, whatever it's called, from the Ninja Turtles guys. But that's no one knows about that stuff. I mean, I'm sure it's selling extremely well, but it's not like working for the big two. Um, so yeah, when Image came around, he was like, well, I guess I better get back in the market. I got to make some money, pay my taxes. And since he thought that it was just a bunch of stupid people reading it, he wrote down. Uh, he explicitly says this.
Okay.
And anyway, so this is him like kind of after From Hell, after Supreme. America's Best Comics is kind of like Alan's superhero homecoming, I guess we'll say. In but to marching to the beat of his own drum still. Very
Yeah.
peak sort of comics for him.
and really like an alternate. Well, not trying to think if this is fair to say. Probably it's not fair to say, but it does seem to be the last little bit of like humanity, or before he becomes a total curmudgeon. And it's
That's
interesting to see.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you see it in Promethea as well. Tom Strong for sure. I'm trying to, I don't know how much, like if we base it off his closing, his storming out the door, essentially over at Avatar, which is the perfect place to storm out somewhere. I don't know how far that go. Like he definitely left in a huff, but I mean, I don't know if he was ever truly a curmudgeon.
I'm
But I
thinking
mean
of the
that,
way it turns up in his stories, in the courtyard stuff, in his darker, more Lovecraftian stuff. He did that. I didn't read it, but there's that like sort of like, was it Alice in Wonderland or Red Riding Hood thing that was sort
Lost
of,
Girls,
yeah.
graphic thing with his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read bits of that. I didn't read the whole thing. Didn't. Oh, I've never owned a big copy of it. I think that's another thing. Like it's a very big book, and it's fairly well illustrated. And anyway, I never wanted to read it digitally or in piecemeal. Thought one day I'd sit down with it.
Yeah. But this is light. This is fun. Obviously, it's full of parody. I like when we tackled Providence, I was like sweating, like just like,
Yeah.
how are we gonna do this justice? This one, I'm like, no, it's fine. We'll just have a conversation. It'll be good.
Yeah. No, it is light fare. It's a comedy. I know it was stupid, but I didn't really see it was a comedy until I read Smacks, and I was like, oh yeah, this is just straight up comedy.
It really
And
is.
yeah, and it's in an old vein of his. Like he has done this before, but way early in his career, with like the Bo Jeffries saga, which I haven't fully read, but it's a take on the Munsters and Addams Family, but it places them into a realistic world. So it takes the fantastic and it grounds it and produces surreality out of that.
Mhm.
So this is him kind of doing something that he did long ago in his career, but you kind of forget that he can do.
Yeah. In fact, it strikes me that maybe I'm reading into this a little bit, but
Hmm.
like it's like he is grappling with the idea of his maybe influences on himself. Like there's sort of this dipping into this golden age, but it's this top 10 is full of this sort of like gee whiz optimism, like the science heroes, the classic sci-fi, but it's also like knowing and parodic, and it understands that you can't really go back to that, but it just kind of celebrates it at the same time.
I think it like this book is illuminated by like comparing and contrasting it against the League of the Extraordinary Gentlemen. The way it handles this, like, what if all these fictions are living in the same world together, kind of thing. Like it's the exact same concept, but it's the comedy version of it rather than the heavy pulp version.
Yeah.
And one tries to be insightful and smart. I know that's putting it stupidly, but this tries to be smart, but more like clever smart.
Yeah.
There's nothing, but there's the same number of references and Easter eggs, and like it is the sort of Allen's foray into idea space, like when he's really trying to like it's as if he's trying to colonize all of fiction in his closing works.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
fair. Or it's in
and
conversation with a lot of like classic science fiction and early golden age kind of superhero comics.
yeah, but all of it, like that's why I
Yeah,
used the
all
word
of it.
colonizing. Like it's
Yeah.
like nothing is untouched. And I don't. That's such a compulsive, weird thing to do in the closing end of your career. Like what? I don't know. I don't know what would spawn
Yeah.
that other than maybe
Unless it's, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say other than proclaiming you're a magician at 8 in 1993. Like
Yeah. Or I kind of like looked at it as sort of like grappling with legacy, and figuring out your place in these traditions. I think we talked about a bit about that with Providence as well, but it struck me that that's happening here too. So did you read that opening essay? The sort of like
I skimmed it.
Okay, that's fair.
Because it kind of tells some of the things that happened in the 49ers.
Okay.
So I found anyway, go on.
So just it does give a bit of the history of the city. So, and like this sort of like fall of like this fallen age, like this sort of silver age thing is built right into the premise here. Talks about how superheroes came to be. And so, in the 40s, people started getting powers and running off to fight Nazis, joining the war effort. And then, but then it talks about how this is funny. There's like this sort of massive buildup, a surplus in the law enforcement marketplace with too few jobs to offer the hordes of science champions who are therefore forced to work and seek employment in less glamorous fields. So there's just like tons and tons of them kind of like around out of work, being a problem. Like, and so they build this city with the aid of like Nazi scientists to kind of house all of them and to have this police force that manages and controls it, which is also like operated by sort of a central hub that from parallel worlds. So like they're kind of like all these police stations, precincts through all these fantastic universes. Yeah. And then it does have this little like at the end of it, so it's sort of this reporter coming in, observing the station, and but it's sort of like got this a little bit of a disillusioned ending. And I think this maybe will just we can keep this in mind as we talk about police. I'm just going to quote this because I think it's kind of important. It occurs to me that as a boy, I often wished that to be a science hero, simply for the freedom the idea represented. Looking at the derelicts and frayed, stained capes asleep beneath the railway bridges on the outskirts of Neapolis, I think again, so what if you can levitate or see through walls? The world is still a heartless place on both sides of those walls, and from up in the clouds, the view is probably much worse. We should salute the officers of Precinct 10, admire them maybe, but not envy them.
Yeah, life's too tough for that. Yeah, well, they are the thin blue line, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Doesn't
really look at policing very critically.
Well, I think it does. Okay, so I think that little bit does, but I think the book, like, okay, so Neapolis, you touched on the fact that it's like built by Project Paperclip essentially. We brought in all the Nazi scientists and we used them for our infrastructure and our special, or the Americans did anyway, in their rocket program, space program. Similarly with Neapolis, and then like, the central precinct, like it's the Roman Empire. They're fascists, literally.
Yeah.
and they're racists and they're elitist and they're like aristocratic.
It's that little Philip K. Dick nod too.
How so?
His break from reality with the Empire never ended. Yeah, the Iron Cage.
Of course.
Yeah. And like
go ahead.
They talk about, there's just that line where he's like, like the Roman Empire still rules here, and they're like, actually yours is one of the strange realities where it doesn't still rule.
Right. Shit, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So okay, the city that they operate in is fascist origin. Like just fascism permeates the background of this story and is like all these stories are told in relation to it, and that it's kind of like, for me, like the superhero. The 1940s. What are the superheroes all doing? Like they're propaganda units to fight. Get. Sorry, I was gonna quote a really unfortunate.
I know what you're
Batman's.
Right?
Yeah.
Probably everyone does.
But the Captain America punching Hitler, that kind of thing. So like it makes sense that fascism is going to be. So like these are all, maybe they're derelict, maybe they're shabby and useless, but like so many of these heroes, but at the same time, like one of the reasons for existing is to be like power fantasies that are deployed against Nazism. And that's kind of still what's happening here. Like, I like that doesn't absolve some of the things that this book wants to say and says about policing, but I think it should be kept in mind. Like there is a criticism here.
That consciously it's against the backdrop of fascism.
Yeah, yeah. And overcomes fascism, right?
Yeah.
You know, all the Nazi, you know, like the Nazis are there in the background as a legacy, but ultimately the police are an anti-fascist organization, right? And that's where it falls apart. That's where it absolutely falls apart. But something's there, and I hope we'll get to it a little bit more later. But I just think that there's a willingness to criticize, but not to criticize too far. And I just think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think part of it is the structure, the form of what Moore's chosen to do here. The idea that if being a superhero isn't a vigilante choice and it's a job, then where are you most likely to end up if you want to fight crime? And then I also wondered too if there's, you know, there's the essential Britishness of the police would have a different feel probably. I don't know. Maybe I'm making that up, but I like broadcast 20 years back, and I don't think just the cultural conversation wasn't what it is now. You know, obviously there's like everyone's, you know, like pigs was like an eternal, you know, like it's not like no one's ever thought of that before, but it doesn't feel like the same. You know, the police haven't been militarized in the States as much as they have been. You know, that's a pretty significant buildup over the last 25 years or so.
I think also it might be worse than you think. Not worse than you think, but like you're more right than you think. So this book is. I thought it was going to be modeled off NYPD Blue, which was like in the 90s, like shortly, relatively, maybe even contemporaneous with this book. And that was a David Milch joint of Deadwood fame, and you know, and I was like, oh, you know, so I looked at that a little bit, and then I read some interviews. Actually, I just checked the Wikipedia, and it says explicitly that it's based off Hill Street Blues, and I was like, that's from 1980. So like he has like, I don't know if it's, and he says it's explicitly so, like he's basing it on a sort of 1980s version of positive television police comedy procedural, which really
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it really did. And it wants to show the grittiness of reality, but it doesn't really want to like really shine a spotlight on anything that might be well, actually, I haven't seen all of the Hill Street Blues. I have barely seen any. I watched an episode earlier today, though. And yeah, it wasn't. It really predates any of the changes in policing and conversations about policing that we might have nowadays. But you would still expect like a confirmed anarchist. Actually, I don't know if he's a confirmed anarchist.
Well, the guy wrote V for Vendetta.
Well, but I don't know, like, is that actually his political views? But you're right. Yeah, like that is one of the reasons I associate him so strongly with that political approach. But
it's something he must have at least thought through at some point.
Yeah. So anyway, like putting aside whether or not the conversation is contemporary, like you'd just think that there would be more of an interrogating eye, but instead these police officers are as trapped within the structures of power as any other person.
That's a good way to put it.
And that's how they're portrayed. And so it makes them more human, but it sort of ignores, like, only actually not occasionally, more often than I thought would be the case. It does show them exercising sort of meanness, but not corruption, not systematic discrimination, you know, stuff like that. It's just like offhand things that hinted something darker.
Yeah, except for Roe, but like I think I was reading some interviews with Gene Ha, and I think there were two artists on this actually. They kind of like traded off.
Yeah. We should talk about. Sorry, Xander Cannon did the layouts because Gene Ha's slow as fuck. So my guess is they got Xander Cannon in to just like do some like light pencils.
That was the case, and Gene like it was very upfront about that.
Yeah. So anyway, you were saying.
Yeah, so he did Cannon did layouts and like backgrounds and things like that, and then Gene did a lot of the like face work, and they kind of came up with the system. But to start out, they were all kind of figuring it out together. And Gene Ha was saying that he thought that Alan Moore like kind of like figured out what he wanted to do with the series as they went around. And I do think some of the more like overtly like blunders into that's kind of fascist happened more in the first part of the book.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. I think especially like the like there's some parts earlier. It makes some just unforced errors. The one thing that struck me, I'll just call this out quickly.
Yeah.
But there's sort of like this like, what's the guy, Grogan, or the that like kind of like King Kong analog?
Gogra,
yeah. They're like look, it's like a lizard ape thing, and then like, I don't think that they should have had him going like calling cops like crackers and stuff like that, because it just like creates this sort of like racial parallel potentially that is not good.
Yeah, I forgot he called them crackers. That's funny.
Yeah, well, but they veer away from that, and then the robots like are like, it's like a parody of like everyone hates robots, or not everyone, like but they're very much sort of like an underclass, and like sort of like, yeah, they're going to take our jobs and that sort of thing. And then it's not like the book definitely doesn't side with that early on, but it's all played for parody and like comedy. So it just kind of like, I don't know, it takes the cop's side for sure.
Yeah. And they're coated black for sure. Like,
exactly.
And so I was thinking about that, and I was like, yeah, you're right. Early on, you're like, what are you doing, Alan? Like, this is, I know it's stupid to say, but like, this is a serious subject, and you've created like something that makes sense for a prejudice, and you can talk about it more openly and use racial slurs and do some things actually that you can't normally be able to do in a regular superhero comic. But like later on, like real racism shows up with King Peacock, the way he's treated, when they're talking about Nubians and the Commodore or whatever, the commander or whatever. She like won't even shake the hand of Dr. Synesthesia. It's Mini Maid, Micro Maid. Anyway, the lady that the doctor. So it sort of prepares you to think about race and talk about race, and then all of a sudden when things start getting really serious and the Nazis are actually in the room, real racism shows up again.
Yeah. And then issue 11 is like goes back to that robot premise and takes it very seriously.
Yeah.
Like, because they have a new officer who's like an AI, and you don't even see the person at first, and like the captain's like, oh, like the city can be culturally backwards, but we're working on it. And shock-headed Peter is like just like full on like what you'd expect from cops, honestly. Yeah. And that changes over the series too. Like it's one of those adjustments. Like shock-headed Peter then becomes consistently like, oh, this guy's the fucking worst.
Yeah, because he wasn't so bad early on, but then all of a sudden like that became his major. Like no one ever becomes truly a caricature, because I think Alan's too good for that. But some people are lesser developed than others, and become like, I guess Shockheaded Pete is one of those. I think I feel he's the least developed out of all of them.
Yeah, I think he just becomes sort of like a joke. And he's just like ginger in that way that can go horribly wrong for men.
I like how all of these guys look like, so again, this is a superhero universe in which all the superheroes needed somewhere to live after the war, as Chris was saying, and like, so there's superpowered beings everywhere, but nobody looks like Jim Lee drew them. And everybody's very mundane. Like, this is the most mundane, fantastic place you'd ever come across. And there's there's very, very few towering physiques. There's Girl One, there's King Peacock, obviously Smacks.
Smacks, yeah. But he's such an exception.
Yeah. And there's beautiful women, but then you also get Armageddon and I don't know who else. I don't know. Well, not that everybody's hideous or whatever, but you just get normal people, normal-ish people. And amongst the men as well. It's pretty normal or mostly bizarre or freakish body types.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think that's an interesting choice. Like, it completely, this thing rides the line between like demystifying superheroes and maintaining their mystery.
It does it really well too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, costumes aren't over the top. Like, no one's like, ridiculous proportions, like revealing like everything they got for as part of their police force. It's like thinking about, it's really grounding it.
Yeah. Although one of them is nude though.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, that's right.
Otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll get back to the police thing because that's sort of unavoidable. But what were some of your favorite parts here?
I mean, the serial killer angle was very interesting. There's like a street sex workers are going missing, or like, well, obviously being murdered at a clip, I guess, during certain periods of time. The Libra killer, so there's a sort of ongoing investigation into that. That was pretty good. Obviously the traffic collision where that sort of
early on
teleport. No, sorry,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
the horrific like teleportation, like the people are kind of fused together in this giant chess piece. That was a pretty affecting issue.
Yeah, that was a really great character one, and as I pointed out and others have pointed out, stolen and used for True Detective.
It's so blatant.
Yeah. It's just like word for word. You're like,
I did not expect that. Yeah.
And it's not even at the crescendo or anything. It's just like it's an offhand comment by the universal chess piece. Trying to find it. I think it's earlier than I realized. It's like issue 8 or something.
Yeah.
That's
sorry, go ahead. I was gonna say I like some of the more ridiculous moments too. Like, I actually like, it should have been so stupid, but the like when they have to bust Santa, and like it's like there's just a sort of like deranged telepath who's dressed as Santa, like kind of manipulating kids and like throwing the cops around. And
and treating them like fucking idiots.
Like that should be ridiculous, but we're just kind of like makes it fun, and I don't know, it was a good moment. And the gods thing too, like they have to investigate the murder of Balder.
Right. That's like, so it starts getting, there's a period when it starts getting like it's just goofy stuff. So there's that Christmas one that you've referred to. And then it goes right into the god killing investigation, and this is before we get the final issue where everything's.
Yeah.
Actually, it might even be after that. Oh no, sorry. Actually, it gets goofy and then it gets kind of heartfelt and then it ends. That's probably a good move. Things have been very serious until then. Wow, I didn't realize that. Did I miss something? Oh, I know what happened. I'm looking at volume 1, and I don't have the rest of this stuff in front of me. I was getting very confused. Sorry about that. Anyway, my favorite, I really love where the mice.
Oh yeah, that
the
was
mice and the
good.
cats. I was really pleased about that. The way that they're like super, like it's a superpowered universe. So like the mice have superpowers too, and so do the cats. And then it ends up in like it just goes through the various stages. And this is that knowing thing you were talking about with more like those knowing, self-critical, like here's what's common in the industry among superheroes, and they're going through the whole cycle of it. And then how it resolves, they're like, no, we changed the timeline. Fuck, how am I gonna get my $5,000 now?
The exterminator like is out of check because like they don't remember ever hiring him.
Yeah.
Or just like never happened.
Mm-hmm. But prior to that, like cat analogs of Galactus has shown up. Someone's got the ultimate nullifier. We're gonna have to. This is gonna take a while.
Yeah, I like when he's like he's talking about like like you don't want your mom sticking around here to watch this, like the cats play with the mice. And he's like, oh, like all cats play with mice. Oh no, they like torture them, like blow them up. Like it's a sick scene.
Yeah. Yeah, so actually I was really wrong about that Santa scene. Obviously that happens earlier than I realized.
Basically.
Yeah. That makes much more sense. My brain was just going a mile a minute there. Yeah, so it gets silly and then it gets silly and then it gets serious and then it gets silly. And it kind of oscillates between that, but mostly silly, which I like. Yeah.
Lighthearted Alan Moore, just something you don't get to spend a lot of time with very often.
Yeah. So the mice events, the continued thing, and King Peacock is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
So he's basically like a black. He's like a character coded as sort of like a black Muslim, who's also like a martial arts Gnostic, and like he's just the coolest guy in the whole series. But he's also, like kind of, I'm not going to say problematic, but you're just like, you don't, he's very, like I said, coded as Muslim, essentially. Like his children, like he loves his wife, but his wife and child like walk far behind him, because he's the man, and it's just sort of like that acceptance of that is not like, I don't, fine, I don't agree with it, but I mean, like some people live their life that way, but there's a functioning family unit there, and it doesn't talk about it at all. It's just there, along with everything else in this, like. And I just, like it's not the most like that's just so adult, but I mean, like in a book about superheroes and stuff, like even something like that is sadly adult.
Yeah, there's so many great character moments too. And I like that. I like his thing. I can't remember the name of who he worships, but basically, like they talk about him like as he's basically a Satanist. Like he basically worships like the Gnostic god
Demiurge.
Yeah, like who has control over matter. So like, oh yeah, Melektos. Is this guy? Yeah, it talks to me. It's a Middle Eastern Satan worshipping thing, Alexi. You wouldn't understand. But yeah, so like he can find the weakness in any matter too. Like he just kind of prays to his god and like just like topples stone with a strike.
Yeah, he just kicks the shit out of everybody, and like it's like the ultimate superpower.
Yeah, it's very cool.
And it kind of implies that. So I think about Gene Ha's work, and I think about so Grant Morrison did 2 issues or maybe 3 of like an Authority series that he was working on with Gene Ha. And it's not very super at all. It's very grounded, very earthy, very mundane in a lot of ways. And like similarly with Alan Moore in Top 10, like I this is probably taking it way too far, but I think for the both of them, like they have like sort of this idea of like the hierarchy of being in the universe. And maybe they feel that there's like a connection as above, so below with like the material world and the spiritual world. But I think contained within that sort of hierarchy, even if it does like sort of flip over onto itself, like there is this idea that there is like the pentacles, like the earth. And this series is like very earthy, very material. And it's almost as if like King Peacock has, he has the ultimate superpower because like that's the earthiest, most material superpower. Like he has special access in this universe to be the one who could. Like, I would have kind of really liked to have seen him fought the Ultima or whatever. Like see how that resolved itself.
Right. Yeah, because he was out of he got the runaround in the cosmic station. Yeah.
Yeah, and like wins like this tournament of like multiversal tournament, right?
Yeah, and then I love his reaction when he gets back and he's got this trophy and he's like, his kids are so impressed. He's like, yeah, like I was forced to fight other officers. This trophy's nothing to be proud of.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, and he just has this very humble sort of material. He's just like kind of the most super heroic of all the characters.
Yeah, but it's like no big deal, It's like.
Yeah. He's just an exceptional. He's one of the exceptional cops, the one that does them all proud. Doesn't get a big head and doesn't fall for his partner. None of that stuff. Like he exists very much above. Like this is like they're always concerned about each other's sexuality, and talking about like amongst the cops, like fear of being afraid of being outed. In general, or being the subject of ridicule, like for the lesbian, what's her it's unfortunate I only the shadow lady, the phantom lady, what is she, the phasing lady?
I can't remember what her name is either.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure like she does. Oh well, she's interesting. She's the phantom lady, we'll just call her the phantom lady. But throughout it, I mean, it even features like explicit bestiality,
yes,
which is another like
there's a whole bunch of like preludes to like modern Moore, the sort of like the sort of stuff he likes to throw in there.
Yeah, so the bestiality thing obviously is a joke and it doesn't like take it that seriously, and like it's not the same as I just thought it was really interesting that everybody's so. And they're throwing around like, you're a dyke, like all that stuff. Like they're very blunt, very aggressive, very blue collar. And it's very relatable, in the sense like you these people, you've encountered these people, these sorts of conversations. And I just like, they're so accepting of everything else, like interdimensional, whatever. But it's a place that still has all these social mores.
Yeah, sort of hang-ups about that. And I mean, that's to the point where Jetlad, who's the like the sort of like, he's the commissioner or whatever, like the
trainer, Steve Trainer.
Yeah. He's
the captain.
The captain. And he's like sort of in the background for a lot of it. But then like you find out very late that he's gay and that he's just doesn't want, he's just is in the closet sort of because he doesn't want to deal with the stigma that in the society. Like he knows better than anybody it's a pretty backwards place.
Yeah, and the other series that Moore did later on, the 49ers, it's basically Steve Trainer's story.
Okay.
And it's a different thing unto itself. But anyway, like it ends with him talking with his husband. And they were like, we were just kids at the time too, commenting on sort of like, because they put, spoilers, they bust a pedophile ring. And so then Trainer goes home and he's just like, I was their age when we got together, like, what does that mean? And so it's kind of it's the story. It's that story. How did that come about? It's a bunch of other things as well, but, I don't know the point of me saying that is, other than it's good. It fills in some blanks on Trainer, like rereading it. Those moments when he's silent, he's very contained, He's very in control. It just felt sort of like reading that one filled in some of the blanks. Like this guy's been through some stuff. Like he's been around since the post-war decommissioning. And he was one of the first sort of people at Neopolis. But this story doesn't tell you that. It just shows that he's really in control. But
that's interesting. That's a prequel worth exploring probably.
Yeah, and it's Gene Ha art. Like I just don't. It's not funny in the way this is funny. It's a little more serious. Yeah, now that I think about it, it is a little bit more serious.
Yeah, I feel like we should mention something about, not to jump from no connection, but we should probably mention the bestiality thing because if anyone's listening, it's just like one of the I guess the sergeant is a dog in a mechanical costume, like he's got like an exoskeleton, and he's like a talking Doberman, and Kemlo, and he ends up meeting this prostitute, sort of sex worker, I should say, who's survived the attack on from the serial killer, who it turns out is like sort of the Martian Manhunter analog. This alien woman.
Oh, Jesus, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah,
You're right. That's like, fucked up.
Yeah, it's pretty fucked up. Yeah, who like came to Earth and like joined the heroes, but then like found out that like being a porn star was more lucrative, so did that, but then started transforming into something totally alien and needing to eat human pineal glands.
Essentially.
So that's why
the adrenochrome,
Yeah, exactly. That's why these murders are happening. So anyway, preying on sex workers, this woman survives, but she has these electrical like stimulation powers. So like that's how they're intimate, is that she can like trigger people's nerves and things like that.
Yeah, and I can bring them to absolute pleasure. But it also shows them kissing.
It does show them kissing. That's right.
They go at the end,
dates, yeah.
And but it's just treated as like, and fine, within this universe, it really is nothing. Like you don't look at it and you're not like weirded out by it.
Yeah.
And until you stop to think about it, you're like,
yeah. Until he gets out of that exoskeleton.
Yeah. Although there is a moment when he is out of the exoskeleton, like she walks in on him nude, essentially. He's like, and she turns around, and it's all treated as if it's like a courtship ritual. And
that's right. Yeah, you're happy to see you, but like, I'm feeling kind of exposed here.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a typical sort of scene that you might see it. I don't know if you'd see it in a police procedural, but you might find it in a movie. And yeah, it's just played really straight, and I don't think it's played for it's not played for laughs. Like sometimes you play things straight for laughs, and like it just doesn't do that.
That's true.
Yeah, it's just left.
Treats it with some dignity.
And old Kemlo deserves his dignity. Like everybody, except for Sparky-headed Pete or whatever, pretty much deserves their dignity.
Yeah.
Even old Smacks.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what do you think of Smacks?
Oh man, especially after having read like the Smacks miniseries, it's so fucking funny. Yeah, Smacks is awesome. I love that. Like he's so fucking curmudgeon-y, so aggressive. Can I tell you like his backstory, like what Smacks is?
Yeah.
So he's from a fantasy parallel world. He's from like there's gingerbread men and little mushroom people, and he used to like slay dragons with his singing sword.
Okay.
Like he was like the child of a troll who had raped some woman, and he kind of lives in a cave and doesn't want to like he's in love with his sister, and he's like I had to leave, but I can't take her with me because I'd be so prejudiced against people marrying their sister. And yeah, he goes on a quest and he brings Toy Box with him, and we haven't even talked about her either. Anyway, it's just funny, like taking this very serious, very gruff character, and you put him back in his like his original water, and like he's just so pathetic and stupid all the time.
That's funny.
But
I
here
really
he's fucking cool.
Yeah, but he's also like stupid. Like I like
that.
Yeah. I think Smacks is my favorite character because he is this like he is that nod to like cops are aggressive assholes, like typically, and it's almost like not even his fault. Like he's literally invulnerable. So like his solution to everything is to fight it. And it's like explicitly drawn out, like when the giant like King Kong guy comes, like they bust his son, and then he shows up and he's all drunk. And he's like, I love that. He's got like tanker like trucks of like beer like hanging from his belt. He just barfs like radioactive puke all over the city. They have to like try to contain it. Like the captain talks him down as Smax is like winding him up because he's like, I'm gonna fight you. It's great.
There's a good actually that helps us like contrast that helps us get at something about the policing element. So there, Smax is obviously like escalating the situation with Godzilla, but then Trainer comes out, de-escalates, peacefully subdues the perpetrator, all that shit, and then just like does good police work in the sense of like you've just diffused the situation, you've processed the individual through the criminal system, and then you've released them. So there's that. But then later on, when they're fighting the commissioner, and Smax walks up and he's like, Captain Trainer, sir, all due respects for permission to use extreme force. And Trainer looks up and he's like, break her fucking neck, son.
Right.
Yes, sir. And it's just that like that glee of brutality that occasionally shows up amongst these police officers, and like when a police officer goes too far and Trainer's like, sounds like self-defense to me, huh? And they're like, yes, sir. Yeah. Like, yes. Like, yeah. He's a fucking agent of repression. And it's there, in those moments.
So true. Yeah. And actually, I was going to say too, like, it's funny that the backstory, because there's a line where Smax is like, I can't believe they're letting those reptiles go. To me, something that big, it breathes fire. That's a dragon.
You're right. There we go.
So it's like a little nod. I didn't realize that was like coming up.
Yeah.
But also Smax, like not just Smax, but earlier, like a moment that I kind of highlighted, narrowed it on, is like they go to bust this like drug operation, and like people are making this radioactive drug. Gromolko is like one of the founders of the city, but he's turned to I guess being a criminal, like an insane like mad scientist. So
he shows up in the 49ers as well. Like his downfall is in the 49ers, but go on.
So yeah, the cops show up and they're like, guess we should read them their rights. And they're just like, yeah, like, okay, you're all dead in there. I guess that's good enough. And like, then they just kind of storm in. It's like this sort of just like police brutality shit, it's like for drugs. Like, I don't know, man. Like I know that it's like an armed gang. Like it's within the context of the story. They know that they're getting into like a dangerous situation, but it just kind of like raised my eyebrow,
Yeah, well, it's like they're almost making fun of it in that moment. Like yeah, let's read these guys their rights. All right.
Exactly. Yeah. Like due process is a joke, and like let's get in there and like fuck these guys up.
Yeah, and so there is a sort of griminess about them. They are themselves, although they serve the law and justice and peace and all that shit, there is, a gang-like quality to them. But it's, and I guess we've already touched on this a bit, but I mean, like, I don't know if I want them to have more of a gang quality, but I'm glad they do, because like if they didn't have that, I would seriously question the morality of this story, let's say the morality of the story.
Yeah. Because it's those signals to sort of like some of the problems with policing, maybe, that you can kind of like read and say, yeah, like there it is.
Yeah, no, and of course, fine, it could have been signposted more, it could have been bigger, it could have been dealt with, could have been the focus of the series, but it really wasn't, because at the end of the day, it's a superhero romp.
Yeah.
And like more knows enough about how to put asses in the seats and tell a good story. And he knows when to pick his battles, right? This isn't the avenue to do that. It's an avenue for some criticism, for quite a bit of criticism, but not like full on like interrogation and deconstruction, and like that's not. He deconstructs superheroes. He's not in the police deconstructing business.
That's fair. Yeah, there's one moment I really liked, and again, it was like Shockhead Peter. But as they at the very last episode, as they go and kind of they round up the Justice League basically are exposed as a pedophile ring, and they kind of like split up, and they all kind of pick members to kind of bring in, and Dust Devil, who's sort of like this like techno cowboy, really a good character. I like his thing with his mom, and like when they're going into that sewers, like his mom's calling him, he's like, I'm about to deal with like a decapitated alien. I don't really have time to deal with this, mom. But anyway, like he shows up, and he's also got like a very like good heart, sort of like one of the guys who's like, cut that prejudice shit out. And so they go to the Batman analog's mansion, and Shockhead Peter's like, I don't like being here. Like this guy's got old money, and his partner's like, yeah, like and taste in young kids too. So it's like it's that sort of like through again Shockhead Pete that you get that sort of typical like cop mentality, siding with authority, siding with wealth. Yeah. And he's the most racist. He's the most like if cop-like. You were looking, he's the most like stereotypically cop-like. Yeah. And he serves in, and he's treated like shit throughout the entire series. Like he's shown to be bumbling. Like he never has a cool moment that I can think of. He does bring down the what, the alien? Yeah, the alien, or at least it's like critical. Like they hit her hard in the sewer, and it's because he blasts her. That's true. Yeah, it's true. So everybody gets a sort of a cool moment, but maybe it's telling that I didn't remember that cool moment. Yeah. There's way more about him that sucks. Yeah. So actually so that the aristocracy thing. So I would like to posit that both Alan Moore and Grant Morrison have a soft spot for the cops. And what they're really concerned about, and what they're ultimately critical of, like totally critical of, like treating as if it's evil, is the aristocracy and larger bureaucratic structures. They're much more concerned about presidents than they are about precinct captains. That is very fair. Yeah. And that's gotta, I don't know, I suppose that's a very British thing, getting back to what you were saying about like where the conversation was and how things were, but they, they're that love of the TV cop, it won't leave these guys. And I just think that's so interesting. Yeah. Well, it's such a genre of story too, I'm sure it's very tempting to tell stories using the police and things like that. Well, especially in the superhero universe, right? It's all about bad guys and criminals and justice and, and like how many fucking TV procedurals are there? TV procedurals, police procedurals are there? Or detective procedurals, or like Law and Order, how long did that last? So it's still going, I think. Yeah, like in different iterations. And people thrilled, like it's for an individual, for any individual, like who telling action adventure stories, like you're gonna deal with some cops, like because they're gonna have action and they're gonna have adventure, they're gonna have detective shit, they're Sherlock Holmes, right? Yeah. Unless you're Junji Ito and like all the cops are useless in your stories. But, well, that's a whole different genre. Yeah, but I think it's like also maybe a different audience. Like Junji's, he's selling for girls magazines, and Alan is a boys magazine man from the get-go. Like that's and so of course we're going in these realms. Like he's a bit of a lad. Whatever his philosophical leanings, like this is what's fun for him. And like he likes to be here for 12 issues. Which is so much work, and his scripts are gigantic. Like he just there's just always so much work that goes into these things. Yeah, that I can't imagine that work ethic. It's incredible. Yeah. Yeah. All right, what'd you think of the end? Like the like the aristocracy, it's like driving at the people on top. That's definitely both Moore and Morrison. And it's funny how we basically get like an Epstein like conspiracy at the end of this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not fun,
No, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But it's like you're like, Alan's, you're way ahead of the curve, man. I mean, I think
very
that,
relevant.
Yeah, but like this whole, I think that talk has been around longer than we think.
For sure. I mean, Satanic Panic is basically built on the idea that people are secretly molesting children, right? So
yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah,
you
so
got
it's
elites
definitely,
and like hidden forces, and yeah.
So it makes sense given Alan's like interests, in like cult interests, conspiracy interests, that kind of thing. So it's there, and then to code it as this is some Garth Ennis shit.
It's like it like prefigures the boys almost.
Yeah. But it doesn't play it for like they're not cartoonishly evil. They're old money evil.
Yes.
But it's the same. Yeah, it's the same sort of thing. They're a bunch of like they're just a bunch of hedonists and degenerates. And they're so frightened. Like that was the thing that was like what their ultimate downfall is. Like once they get caught, they just fucking panic.
Yeah.
And they're afraid of getting caught. They're just constantly. And then he's even got a Jazine Maxwell that like she basically like that blonde chick. She is basically like she sets up the sex workers, like not sex workers, there's the children, the victims, and then even like warns him using like ultrasound.
That's right.
Like the complete enabler.
Yeah. The Superman character that is the Atom Man, he's like obviously the ringleader. That's such a like that is an amazing moment.
Uncle Craig, they're coming for you, and he's like, oh crap.
Yeah, it's just like so undignified. Runs for his panic room.
Yeah, no, he's just like he's in this. He's in Superman's Fortress of Solitude, but it's all fucking ridiculous. And zany. Like you even see Ma and Pa Kent in the background, right? Like he's so. Right. He's just like, and he's got something in his hand, like he's reading a magazine or something.
Yeah.
Oh crap! And he's just like, it's so funny. But again, not zany. Like he's just kind of pathetic.
Yeah, it's very pathetic.
And how he's dealt with by Joe Pye.
Yeah, that's amazing.
He's such a great character. Like he was so charming. I was laughing. I was touched. Like he was my favorite character by far.
Yeah. So Joe Pye is an AI robot.
He's like Ultraman. He's like a manga.
He is. Yeah. He looks a bit. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he has to kind of like prove himself, and he's just like very, Irma's kind of saying, like, oh, that guy's lifespan's like 300 years. Like he's gonna get out in 15 years and do the same thing over again. And like Joe's like, he breaks his like recording these. Oh, like my stuff malfunctioning. So if anyone were to say anything illegal or suggest anything illegal, like I guess I wouldn't be able to pick up on it.
Yeah, and he's just like, well, because he basically like, okay, so in today's talk, like he has a camera on his chest. He fucking breaks the camera. It's like, well, if something bad were to happen, like he's such like he's a prick too. Yeah. He's like he's a prick among pricks, and so he's like, look, I'm corrupt too. Like everybody's worried that he's so inauthentic.
That's right.
And his way of proving his authenticity is to show that he's a fucking prick, and then also to talk Superman into suicide. You'll never get away if you got to go to your room of sounds. Like, haha, you idiot. Wait, Craig, what do you mean?
Yeah. I have miscalculated. Please, Craig, don't do anything rash.
Yeah. This is screwed. And they're like, shh. And so like at the same time as that he's proving himself a prick, and therefore acceptable amongst the police officers, he's also like charming the children. He's winning over Armageddon, who has lost her partner after the Ultima attack. and he's overcoming the prejudice of shock-headed Pete or whatever, just making shock-headed Pete look like a shithead.
Yeah.
But like, it's not that he's like a paragon of virtue. He's just like, he's just really witty and fun and like a
Yeah.
great guy. And yeah, and then he's also going to bend the rules as a police officer should in this universe.
Yeah, it's interesting that like the whole story basically comes down to an act of like what's essentially vigilante justice, and then I don't know, like, is that like undermining, or is it intentionally subversive, like pointing to the limitations of police forces? Or
I think so, and ultimately like in a universe in which superheroes are real and necessary, like isn't that the necessary condition of that universe, which is that like police forces can't, it's basically the Punisher, you know, superheroes exist in a vigilante universe. They don't exist outside of that. Otherwise they're just hunted by the cops all the time, right? And they're the villains. But in a world in which the justice system necessarily cannot prevail or serve its proper function,
because of the constraints placed on it by, that's the thing too, they keep getting like stonewalled by the elites, right? Like they
their
try
shark
to investigate.
lawyer.
Yeah, or they try to investigate the drug thing, and then it turns out that the commissioner of all universes is high on like nuclear drugs.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about that.
Ultimately,
yeah, so it's not just that they're fascists, they're like, that's very properly Hitler. To be like super on drugs. That didn't really, I thought that was stupid until I just made that connection now though. Of course they'd be on drugs.
Yeah. And she's
but
totally
all the power, insane.
Good.
Oh, I was just gonna, like, all the power structures are the aristocratic power structures, the fascistic power structures. They're also like tied into what do we want to call it? Like a sort of a negative libidinal force, you know, like they're the bad desire.
Yeah.
And
like,
it's
almost in an Invisibles kind of way.
Exactly. Well, that's why I like, again, the comparison with Grant Morrison just seemed really, really apt, because they're both sort of concerned, and they swim in the same waters. They just have such different approaches, but they want to say the same things.
Yeah.
You know, in they're different idioms.
Shit. I've the other thing that I don't want to let pass up, although it does feel like a bit of a diversion now, but there's the whole subplot of the that molester, the
goose.
Yeah.
The ghostly goose. Yeah.
Yeah, sort of like this thing is terrorizing, like, it's just like groping women, and it's invisible, and it's played for like basically as a joke, like it's just like supposed to be funny, but like it does, like, absolutely the police attitudes towards sexual assault is totally preserved. Like in the first issue, they're like, oh, relax, he's not going to get you again. Like there's
it's like lightning.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then
we're taking it real serious.
And like the plot that takes it real serious too, like it's a dead end. Like it's like the
goose wins.
Yeah, the lesbian cop like gets groped, and she's like, oh, nobody's leaving until we figure this out. And like the last we see of it, it's like attached to the back of her chair, just kind of giggling.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah, that's fucking weird. Like a weird thing to drop. Like there's no reason for it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's in the Christmas episode, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to find it, but yeah, I don't know. There is a way in which, like, because the goose never shows up after that. So there's two possibilities. One, he stayed a chair and constantly gropes every police officer's ass.
Oh my God.
Or was found out thereafter. You know, like that. Like, is that implied? It is. It does hang there as if like it's a joke that's just left. You know, like that's the punchline. Da da.
Yeah.
But
I think it stayed a chair.
Yeah, that's my headcanon from now on. And every time Grimalko sits on, not Grimalko, the dog man,
Oh
um,
yeah, Kemla.
Camlo, that's right. Yeah, and she punches him in the face because like he's colorblind.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he's like, "You've been looking at me nude the entire time," and you're like, "Should have told me." And then he's lying about it. He's like, "Actually, I'm a dog and I'm not attracted to you at all." And then he jokes later on. He's like, "Don't tell anybody about the fact that I'm like a dog and like I actually am dating a Shih Tzu." Um, and then he's joking around with that guy later on. It's like, and she believed I was dating a Shih Tzu.
Yeah. That's,
Just implying like he just looks at her nude all the time.
yeah. Yep. Uh,
Um, so yeah, like passive workplace sexual assault or
yeah.
active workplace sexual assault,
Exactly.
totally, totally the subject of hilarity.
Yeah.
Um, which
These.
is like is true to the spirit of a book like this. But I would think it was not meaningful if we didn't think back to how the Invisible Man in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is treated. He gets treated very badly in the end. Let's be clear. He's like the villain of the piece, but um, early on, he's just like having sex with those like boarding school girls, and like that's the like they're talking about all these miraculous pregnancies that are
Oh, I
occurring.
forgot all about that.
Yeah, and so some of them are like just floating in air, being like, well, they're essentially being raped, but they're just looking like a like a like not a comedy piece, but like a gag, which is the same thing. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
so he it's kind of a weakness of Moore. He
Moore's
like
got
the
his
invisible.
themes. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got his invisible predator. He's like, that's fine. That's good comedy. At least he
Jesus.
has. At least he has Hyde fucking basically rape him to death.
Oh God.
that's that's how he exercises that particular team. That's what happens when you're a magician. You're just
Holy
like, how
shit.
do I rid myself of these horrible fantasies? I know.
That is so on the nose with like all the criticisms of Alan Moore too. That like just like, oh, there's way too much rape in his book. He's like, no, hold on, I got a plot resolution for you.
What if you fought fire? Listen, with fire. Wait for it. Here we go. Amazing.
Jesus.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I'm sure we could go on about. Is there like any major themes that we haven't gotten yet, or like?
No, I think that's a pretty satisfactory conversation about the main stuff anyway.
Yeah. Like we could go
Yeah.
into the. Oh, there's lots of Like I love all these characters. I love them.
Yeah.
Dust
It's like
Devil gets
they're
an awesome fucking final moment. Everybody gets like we were saying. Everybody gets a cool moment.
yeah. There's so many great little character moments and like you kind of just want to spend time with they don't maybe nobody really like super stands out, but they kind of gel together and it works really well. And I think that kind of gets to like one of the main things that I think like when we thinking about the way that this story presents police, I think
Mhm.
part of the treatment is that it just kind of wants to point to I don't know like a dignity, a sort of like going back to that idea that this is maybe grappling with what superheroes are, what the golden age is, the sort of appeal or like trying to recover something out of it. It seems to want to say that if nothing else, people can work in good faith and maybe enact some change, despite everything being stacked against them in society.
Mhm.
Yeah, and maybe if that's sort of your message, like you're gonna come across a little bit as like a little pro police or just sort of like comfortable status quo.
Well, okay. I know we're kind of like that felt like a wrap up, but it also made me think of the episode with the traffic accident one.
Oh yeah, the Zen driver.
No. Sorry, the back to the chess piece one where the
Oh, right,
horrible. And I thought about like, it isn't that they're because she's standing outside. She's she's looking at like everybody has accidents. She's talking about society being random, and the world being random.
Yeah, hate accidents more than murder because maybe it is just a game. I think she says something like that.
Yeah, and like all they do in this is like, yeah, okay, they find out who the culprit was in the accident, but they're never undoing anything. And mostly they're just like discovering how fucking absurd. Like, I can't believe you did it. Like you caused them to smash in to end up merging together and dying for some sort of like ridiculous reason. And they're mostly witnesses to society's violence. Like that's more what they like. I'm fine. They enact their own sort of violence and they do stuff, but what it really signposted, like that particular issue, particularly since there's that like sort of Gnosticism features prominently in this, like that the chess piece, like his philosophy and the kind of dark humor of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's very funny, but it's also very poignant and meaningful.
Yeah. I'm afraid you and I will be doing no more fucking, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the dude laughs and they come together and they both sort of die and then the cop prays Peregrine or whatever. And like I don't think that sums it up, but I think it's kind of like that's what this book is registering. Like these people are they're not superheroes. They're more like the Fantastic Four. They go into these extraordinary circumstances. Sometimes they have to bring order. Most of the time they just have to witness and try to understand. And that's what police do in Top 10 Universe.
Yeah, that sounds accurate.
Yeah. Sometimes they fucking beat some heads though, because they're cops.
Yeah, Smacks has a job.
Smacks does his job. He does not try to understand shit.
No. Yeah.
Now all we need is a little energon and a lot of luck.